Welcome to Betrayal Affairs. In today's video, I'm bringing you a story that began with something as ordinary as learning to drive, yet unfolded into a complicated, forbidden connection that neither of us could have predicted. It's about mistakes and choices, about moments that test who we really are, and about how a single decision can change the direction of your life in ways you never imagined. Before I take you into it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. It only takes a second, but it helps this channel more than you know, and it means you'll never miss any of the intense, real-life stories we share here. Now, let's begin. I was 28 years old and, to be honest, more than a little embarrassed that I still didn't have my driver's license. I had always brushed it off with a laugh, blaming it on the fact that I'd grown up in the center of Portland. Public transportation was always right outside my door, and friends were quick to give me rides. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. It was avoidance. Driving had always made me nervous. The idea of being responsible for thousands of pounds of metal on the road, of making split-second decisions that could affect not only me but everyone around me, it terrified me. But at 28, that excuse was starting to wear thin. Friends teased me. Coworkers raised their eyebrows. And every time I fumbled with bus schedules or turned down invitations because I didn't have a car, I felt smaller. So, one evening, I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and typed in driving instructors near me. That's how I met Mike. The first time I saw him, I almost turned around and walked back out of the small driving school office. He wasn't what I expected. I had pictured someone stern, maybe in his 50s or 60s, wearing thick glasses and a disapproving frown. Someone who'd lecture me about responsibility and scold me every time I stalled the car. But Mike was different. He was in his early 40s, maybe 42. His hair was dark, threaded with gray at the temples, and his eyes held that kind of quiet intensity that made you feel like he saw more than you were saying. His button-down shirt fit just right across his shoulders, his sleeves rolled casually to his elbows, like he had walked in straight from a business meeting but had somehow made it look effortless. There was a calmness about him, a steadiness that instantly eased some of the tension I'd been carrying. "Kate," he asked, glancing down at the clipboard in his hands before looking back at me with a small smile. "That's me," I said, my voice catching slightly, though I couldn't explain why. "Great. I'm Mike. I'll be your instructor." From the very first lesson, I knew why people recommended him. He was patient, never rushing me, never making me feel foolish when I made mistakes. When I forgot to release the parking brake, when I stalled at a light, when I took a corner too wide, he didn't sigh or roll his eyes like I half expected. Instead, he explained calmly what had happened, walked me through it, and encouraged me to try again. And yet, there was something else. Something I noticed almost immediately but told myself I was imagining. The way his eyes lingered on me a second too long when I smiled nervously after finally getting something right. The way his hand brushed mine when he adjusted the steering wheel, sending a jolt through me I hadn't expected. The way his voice dropped lower, softer, when he leaned close to explain something, his breath warm against my cheek. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing. That it was just my own restless imagination, desperate for distraction. But by the fifth lesson, I couldn't deny it anymore. There was something unspoken hanging between us. That evening, we had finished practicing on quiet neighborhood streets and were pulling back into the driving school parking lot. My heart was still racing from the near miss at a four-way stop where I'd misjudged another driver's speed. But Mike had stayed calm, guiding me through it, his steady tone grounding me until the panic passed. "You're getting better," he said as I put the car into park. "Thanks to you," I replied without thinking, turning toward him. For a moment, our eyes met. Something shifted. His gaze softened, but there was heat behind it, something restrained but unmistakable. Then, just as quickly, he looked away, gathering his clipboard. "Same time Thursday?" he asked, his voice neutral again. "Thursday," I agreed, though my chest was still tight from the unspoken moment that had passed between us. Thursday's lesson felt different from the start. Instead of sticking to the familiar parking lots and quiet blocks, Mike directed me toward the outskirts of town. The streets grew emptier, the curbs sharper, the scenery more open as the city gave way to winding hills and stretches of trees. "Let's see how you handle real roads," he said with a small smile. But his eyes stayed on me more than the mirrors or the road. The sun dipped low as we drove, casting everything in amber light. I should have been focused on the road, on the steering wheel beneath my hands, but I felt his attention on me, heavy and consuming. Every time I risked a glance at him, he was watching me, not with criticism, but with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. "Pull over here," he said suddenly, pointing to a small scenic overlook. I obeyed, easing the car to a stop. I expected him to launch into a critique about my turns or parking angles, but instead, he turned in his seat to face me fully. "You've been tense," he said quietly. My heart jumped. "I guess I'm just nervous," I said, my fingers twisting together in my lap. "About driving?" he asked, but there was something in his tone, something that suggested we both knew he wasn't just talking about driving. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Maybe not just driving," I admitted before I could stop myself. The words hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the cooling engine, the fading hum of the world outside the car. "Kate," he said finally, his voice low, careful. "If I'm reading this wrong, you're not," I whispered, cutting him off. His breath caught, just faintly, and in that suspended silence, the entire world seemed to tilt. I felt the weight of what we were about to step into, the risk, the impropriety, the inevitable complications. I knew I should look away, change the subject, pull the car back onto the road and pretend this never happened. But instead, I found myself leaning into the tension, drawn by something I couldn't explain or resist. We didn't cross the line that day, not completely. But something shifted irreversibly. The air between us crackled with a charge I couldn't ignore, and from then on, every lesson carried with it a weight of possibility, a silent question hanging in the space between us: what if? I told myself I wouldn't let it go further. That I valued the lessons, that I needed my license, that whatever I was feeling was just a crush on an older man who happened to be kind and patient. But denial only works for so long. The truth was, I thought about him even when I wasn't in the car. I replayed his words, the way he looked at me, the way my name sounded in his mouth. And one evening, when the lesson ended and he hesitated before unlocking his side of the car, I knew the line we had both been dancing around was about to disappear. What followed wasn't reckless passion in a dark car, not something rushed or careless. Instead, it was slower, heavier, threaded with hesitation and questions. A hand brushing against mine but not pulling away. A moment too long spent looking into each other's eyes. A confession that neither of us had meant to say aloud. I won't tell you it was right. I won't even tell you it was wise. But I will tell you it was real. The connection, the pull, the sense that for all the risks, for all the reasons to turn back, there was also a reason to step forward. And we did. What happened afterward was complicated. There were moments of tenderness that felt like discoveries, as if I was seeing myself through someone else's eyes for the first time. There were moments of guilt that clawed at me late at night, making me question everything. There were stolen glances during lessons, careful conversations about boundaries, attempts to define something that resisted being defined. I learned more than just driving in those weeks. I learned how easily a single decision can grow roots and branches that tangle around your life, making it impossible to separate one thing from another. When I finally passed my driving test, it should have been a moment of uncomplicated pride. Instead, it was bittersweet. Because by then, driving lessons weren't just driving lessons anymore. They had become something else entirely. I don't know if I regret it. Regret feels too simple for something this layered. What I do know is that I'll never forget it, the way it began so innocently, the way it deepened so quickly, the way it changed me. So let me ask you, have you ever found yourself pulled towards someone you knew you shouldn't be drawn to? Have you ever crossed a line, or almost crossed one, and wondered afterward if it was worth it? Tell me in the comments, I read every single one. And if you found yourself caught up in this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next on Betrayal Affairs.